makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part.
Jimmy Dore brought on another doctor on his show to discuss controversial issues regarding COVID. Now, in the past, he has invited some doctors with rather dodgy credentials. For example, a couple of weeks or months ago, he invited this guy, Dr. Robert Malone, who actually was featured in an Atlantic article on the vaccine scientists spreading vaccine misinformation. He was apparently someone who claimed to have invented mRNA technology and, well, apparently is not a huge fan of vaccines. Anyway, his latest guest is this guy, Dr. Ram Yogendra, who is an anesthesiologist. I'm not sure why that would classify you as a COVID expert. I mean, just because you have doctor before your name does not necessarily mean that you are qualified to give expert opinions on an infectious disease. You know, do you want a proctologist doing your heart surgery? I don't think you would. And, this goes to a lot of professions, including my own as an economist. Do I want an expert on fiscal policy to be running the central bank? Probably not. So let's see the video. And I've only seen the first half of it. And the reason I'm making a reaction to it is because I heard some things that are just patently false. Or misleading. So I haven't seen the second part of the video, so any reaction will be entirely impromptu.
In Israel, ultra-vax Israel's crisis is a dire warning to America. Guess.
Okay, so context. What is this video? The video is COVID surges among vaccinated in Israel. What do you think the message is here? Because remember, Jimmy Dore has not made a single video promoting vaccine use. A single one. So, what is the purpose of a video called COVID surges among vaccinated in all caps? Is it perhaps to hint that vaccines are useless? That is the concept of being a soft anti-vaxxer. That is, you're not openly against vaccines, but all the information that you peddled can be construed, or rather is intended for people to reach the conclusion that vaccines are bad or harmful, or that there are other ways to protect yourself, like horse dewormers or natural immunity, God knows what. But that is really the message behind all this. So let's see what he has to say.
Guess what? There is a massive surge in COVID-19 infections in Israel, despite being one of the most vaccinated countries on earth. In June, there were several days with 0 new COVID infections in Israel. The country launched its national vaccination campaign last year and has one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, with 80% of citizens above the age 12 fully inoculated. COVID, most Israelis thought, had been defeated. Fast forward 2 months later, Israel reported 9,831 new diagnosis cases in one day, a hairbreadth away from the worst day figure ever recorded in the country, 10,000 at its peak during the third wave. More than 350 people have died of the disease in the first 3 weeks of August. In a Sunday press conference, the directors of 7 public hospitals announced that they could no longer admit any coronavirus patients. The principal cause of Israelis' current predicament are the dominance of the extremely infectious Delta variant, along with the worrisome decrease in vaccine efficacy after about 6 months. Israel vaccinated its population almost exclusively with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which received full FDA approval in the United States. But in early June, with citizens over the age of 60 almost completely vaccinated, Israel scientists began observing a rise in infections among the double vaccinated. In order to keep the number of COVID deaths down and avoiding a fourth national lockdown, Israel has embarked on an aggressive effort to provide all adults with boosters in a matter of weeks. Israel will then reconfigure its vaccine green passports, granting them only to the triple vaccinated and limiting their validity to 6 months.
So you can see where this is going, right? This is going to be construed as an argument against the tyranny and the authoritarianism of vaccine passports or mandates or whatever, and the need to vaccinate, keep people vaccinated for the benefit of big pharma profits. That's going to be the argument that he's going to make.
So let's talk about this. So what can you shed any light on what's happening? I thought if everybody got vaccinated, we could beat the virus, but that doesn't seem to be happening. Can you?
Yeah, because of Delta. We know that. That is the he when he says things like this, it's because he wants you to think that, oh, suddenly they lied to you from the start. They lied to you. Do not factor in that we have a variant that essentially, at least in terms of the ability to infect yourself, is highly resistant to the vaccine.
Explain that at all?
Yeah, that was poor messaging from our health officials from the very beginning. We said, take the vaccine.
So again, the problem was the poor messaging, not the fact that we have a different variant that rendered previous messaging moot. So it's always blame the authorities.
And you could get your life back. But that's not how it works. We all knew that these antibodies were going to wane off. And the reason why is last year, when we were looking at patients that had COVID from natural immunity and looked at their antibodies, a lot of them started, about 5-6 months after the infection. Many of them didn't have antibodies. Well, they started out with a high level. So when you look at natural immunity from last year, it was natural that the antibodies from the vaccine, like we all knew in medicine, they were going to wane off over time. We just didn't know how long it would be. I think we all knew, because if you were looking at the natural immunity from last year in the studies, then most likely, these vaccines are probably the immunity is probably going to last you about 4, 5, 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. But what's interesting is like when the vaccines were rolled out at the end of the year, last year, people were talking about, some study came out saying it's going to be 5 years of protection. There was a lot of these things that were not based on really any science, but these things were pushed out because then now people will have more confidence and they will go run out and get the vaccine and go, I'm protected for the next 5 years.
I've never heard that claim, by the way. Never. I don't know who peddled that. I have never come across anyone categorically affirming that the vaccines would last 5 years.
Well, this is not unexpected. The antibodies have waned off. The new variants they're escaping the antibodies. They're not effective. So it's a combination of both of them. And now we're in the situation where, we've got to give another jab, and there's no data to support that. And
wait, he's just saying that apparently immunity only lasts 6 months, but then there's no data to support that we need another jab. So how are you going to keep maintaining your immunity? This is very, very odd. He's contradicting himself literally seconds after saying something.
I mean, Israel obviously considers to be fully vaccinated, having 3 vaccines. And, here's the other thing is there are many countries that we still don't have, these poorer countries don't have vaccines. And here we are, the Western world, and we just jabbing everyone away. But here's the other thing: it's like we think we live in a bubble. Like those people don't even exist in these other countries that don't have access. For example, I have friends in New Zealand and Australia. I mean, the numbers of people in those countries, they don't have, but most of them are not vaccinated. I think probably like 20% of Australia is vaccinated. So why aren't we rolling the vaccines out to those countries to help them out? And
so apparently Australia and New Zealand are dirt poor countries that can't afford vaccines. Oh my fucking god! This can't be serious. This just can't be serious. How on earth do you make the claim that poor countries are not getting vaccines, and then the countries that you immediately name that don't have enough vaccines are Australia and New Zealand? Holy crap. Yeah, this is crazy. Also, I would suspect that the vaccination levels are much higher now, not 20%. I mean, even Mexico now has like 45, almost 50%. I doubt Australia and New Zealand are that much, if they are behind, because I know they started a bit late, but I don't think they're that. Let's actually look at this. Like I said, I did not prepare. I usually have all my tabs prepared, not today. And my mouse isn't working well either. So let's look at the map. Okay, there's no map here. Let's just add Australia. All right, Australia is at 41% of fully vaccinated, 12%, 21% partly vaccinated, so 62%. So they're just 1% behind the US. What the fuck? How is he brought in as a COVID expert and mentions Australia and didn't even bother to look at the state of vaccination in Australia? Let's look at New Zealand. New Zealand. There we go. New Zealand is even higher. 35% fully vaccinated. And yeah, 30% partly. This is crazy. How? What? I can't believe this. I can't believe the type of idiots that he brings on his show is incredible.
Shown in the Pfizer and Moderna trials was the effectiveness was about 93%, maybe 92% after one shot. The second shot was a booster. So why not hold off on that?
Because clearly not for Delta. Like the studies have shown that the first dose of the vaccines against Delta provides very, something like 60, 70%. And then it's the second shot that actually brings it back up to 90.
To come up with the 3 weeks after. Why not wait for three months after they get the second shot? You get a longer immunity for you can stretch this out a little bit more.
I actually agree on this point. In fact, there was a study that came out quite recently. I don't have the link to it, but apparently suggested that AstraZeneca has a weaker immune response immediately after the shots, but it has a longer lasting effect. And the difference is because AstraZeneca recommends the shots being taken at least 2 months apart. Anything from, I think it's 8 to 10 weeks that they recommend, or even 12 weeks. 8 to 12 weeks is what they recommend. So that actually might be a case to be made that all the other vaccines should actually have the shots spread out.
None of this makes really any sense. And I think the Israel thing is really coming to light because we were thinking, oh, they're fully vaccinated. I think it's a combination, as this article was saying. The antibodies have gone down. You've got this new Delta variant. You've got many other variants now that are popping up. But here's the other interesting thing. The boosters, they're not for the new variants. They're for the old variants.
You're kidding.
What the fuck? This is the most idiotic, imbecilic thing I've ever heard. The boosters are the same thing. It's the same shot. It's never meant to be a different shot. Boosters are the same shot as the vaccine. And he's saying this like, oh my God, this is a conspiracy. They're actually, what? How stupid are the people who watch this? And it's been a year and a half of pandemic, and they haven't researched. They haven't learned what a booster shot is. A booster shot is not a special version of a vaccine that you get afterwards. It's the same shot. There's just one vaccine. In fact, the only vaccine that has different shots is Sputnik, actually. So they're slightly different. I'm not sure if they're planning a booster campaign in Russia, which one they recommend, I don't know. But all the other ones, your first and your second shot are exactly the same. And your booster shot is exactly the same.
Nope.
So how could they?
And I don't.
So Delta is more effective. If you're vaccinated, you can still get the Delta. You can still get sick with the Delta. It's breaking through. They're called breakthrough infections, right? And so you're saying the boosters don't deal with the Delta?
No. And one of the interesting.
Well, if the original vaccine has limitations in your ability to protect you from infection, clearly the booster isn't really going to help much. Remember, the whole point of these vaccines is to prevent you from dying or from being seriously ill. The reason that people in Israel, and it's mostly been older people, who have fallen sick from Delta despite being double vaccinated, is precisely because that protection is not the protection against contagion. It's the protection against serious illness and death that has clearly been less effective. And remember, older people, when they get the vaccine, their probability of serious illness and death is not zero. It merely brings you down to the odds of a much younger person. So no one ever claimed that especially old and vulnerable people getting double vaccinated would always be protected. No one has ever made that claim.
Things was when the mRNA vaccines were rolled out, one of the benefits behind the mRNA is one, the scalability and in a very quick time, which would have made it very attractive. And two, if they could change the code very quickly, just in a matter of a couple of weeks, to confer protection against new variants. And my understanding, and I was thinking for a little while, maybe these new boosters, and I talked to a couple of public health officials and people in the vaccine research. Actually, one person on our team was in the Pfizer trials at NYU, Dr. Parikh, and she said, no, they're giving a booster for the old vaccine. And I don't know the reason why it's not been configured for these new variants.
So let me ask you this. This is a question that I have so people.
Well, I suspect perhaps one reason is the manufacturing process. Maybe you can develop a slightly revised vaccine for the new variants. You still need to test it, so it's going to take various months again while you do all that, because you still have to do the basic trials, up to the phase 3 trials. So everything that was going on last year during the summer and fall, before they were actually starting to produce, that would have to go on again. So if they tweak the formula right now, we still would not be getting the new Delta boosters or whatever until many, many months later. So yeah, I mean, what do these people expect? Like, just tomorrow they're just going to produce a different version of it? Unbelievable.
People like to bring this up. They compare the vaccine for COVID-19 with like the measles and mumps and polio. So why do I have immunity from polio forever, but I don't get with that vaccine, but I don't get immunity from COVID-19 forever? Well, tell me the difference.
Because they're different viruses, Jimmy. That's why. Because also when you get one of those diseases, you get the immunity for life. I bet you he's not going to say that. I bet you anything. So this is the part of the video that I haven't seen before, but I will bet you that they will not mention that. Because actually that was one of the things that I criticized in the Kim Iversen video that fucking YouTube took down and gave me a warning. Because that was one of the claims that she was making. That, why do we only need like one shot? Why does natural immunity to any one of these diseases count as a vaccine? That's what she made the claim, and I'm sure we'll hear that.
So a lot of those vaccines are, either live attenuated or they're weakened viruses, like a full virus or like an intact virus that's either been weakened or killed off in a process, and you introduce that to the body, and then your body makes a full antibody or a full immune response.
That's how every other vaccine that's not the mRNA ones work, by the way.
So you have your antibodies, you have then a T-cell response. When we are using this mRNA technology, we're only targeting one component of the virus. We're only targeting the spike protein. Because why the spike? That is the thing that is infecting the cells.
By the way, I'm sure all this talk about mRNA makes Jimmy Dore's idiotic fanboys just associate that like, oh, this is scary. mRNA, that must change you. Because the argument that a lot of these anti-vaxxers claim, that it changes your DNA. That's what they hear when there's all this criticism about mRNA. That it somehow changes the composition of your very existence.
Affects the cells in the body. So what they've done is build antibodies against the spike so that it prevents it. If you do get infection again, it then will neutralize those spikes from the vaccine. So you're not being introduced to a weakened virus. You're not introduced to a dead virus or an inactivated virus. You're introducing a little piece of it. And that could probably be a reason why you're not having a robust immune response, let's say from a live attenuated or a weakened virus. Some of the other viruses, I believe there's the vaccines, the one from China is a live attenuated or an inactivated virus. They're not coding for the spike protein. So it'll be interesting. I've not seen any data yet out of China and the countries that have gotten the Chinese vaccine, it'll be interesting to see sort of how much of protection they're getting and compare it to the mRNA.
So why would they do it that? Well, so my reaction is, well, why?
So bingo, he did not mention at all that they are fundamentally different viruses that generate fundamentally different immune responses. That's why both the vaccine and catching it gives you lifetime protection, because they are different viruses. Coronaviruses do not give you lifetime immunity.
Why wouldn't you do it the polio way, which is permanent? Why would you do it this way, which is temporary?
You can quickly roll this out. See what happens is for a lot of the other
What Jimmy Dore wants to get at is that this is deliberate. This was a deliberate strategy by Big Pharma. That's what he's implying. That it's a deliberate strategy by Big Pharma to make vaccines that you will need over and over and over again. That is the implication. That is what his fucking idiot fanboys are hearing.
Vaccines, it's like there's this incubation period. A lot of times they put it in egg yolk. It takes months and months and months and months to get those vaccines. The thing with the mRNA, the technology is that you can scale it very quickly. So that was the attraction. We could get it to market quicker than some of the other.
Business, markets, money. I was right.
Platforms. Now, there are still other companies, believe it or not, Jimmy, and this is my argument I've made, is that we're so focused on these mRNA vaccines. But there are other platforms out there. For example, there's a company called Novavax. Novavax is probably going to be the fourth vaccine to get an EUA. I feel like the FDA has been dragging their feet. The EU regulators have been dragging their feet about it. But the data looks amazing. I know a lot of people who are on the clinical trials of Novavax. They use a different technology. They are introducing a spike protein, but through a nanoparticles. They don't use mRNA to deliver the spike proteins. And then at the same time, there are all these other tiny biotech companies that have some really fascinating platforms. They're using I know we were talking about horse dewormer, but that's actually a horsepox vector. One company is doing that. There's another company that's using peptides to deliver the vaccine. So there's multiple different platforms. There's like over 100 different manufacturers that are making these vaccines, but we're not talking about it. There's a number of people that have told me, I do not want to take an mRNA vaccine, but I'll take a Novavax vaccine. It's staggering. I think we could close the vaccine hesitancy with approval of Novavax.
What the hell is this? What the hell is... Well, why don't they approve, for example, the AstraZeneca vaccine, which is not an mRNA vaccine? The US has quite a stockpile of AstraZeneca vaccines that they haven't been using. Why it hasn't been approved, I don't know. If you don't want the mRNA ones, take the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's also not an mRNA vaccine. I mean, you have options. You don't necessarily have to take the Pfizer or the Moderna. Which, by the way, Moderna is a relatively small company. In fact, I believe that this is the very first vaccine that they produce. Also, the Pfizer vaccine was not developed by Pfizer. It was developed by BioNTech, a German biomedical company. They did the research on it. They partnered with Pfizer to, take advantage of Pfizer's manufacturing and distributional capability. But they're the ones who actually invented it. So these are all small companies that if they're going to spread a vaccine, distribute a vaccine all around the world, they will probably have to form a partnership with a bigger firm. Also, AstraZeneca, that was developed by Oxford University. And they had originally planned to give the vaccine IP out for free until Bill fucking Gates convinced them to partner with AstraZeneca. But yeah, I mean, Big Pharma isn't just like the big 3 or 4 or 5 global pharmaceuticals. It could involve any of these other firms as well. But these are the arguments. Like I said, the whole purpose of this is to make you skeptical about everything.
I think we can get more people vaccinated by giving them more options. Isn't that what America is about? Options and different. You give people different options and let them make a decision. So I personally feel like more resources, more focus should be going to some of these little tiny biotech companies. The problem is that they're running a trial because they're a little tiny, looking at maybe 500 patients. When you got your big pharma, Pfizer, Moderna, they got 50,000, they got 100,000. So now when you got these statisticians that are looking at it going, oh, you don't have the numbers, your N is too small, it's only 500. And these little biotech companies, they're like literally scraping just to get by. So it's just but part of it is the how much the journalists and the media just do not let the public know about these other platforms.
A lot of the funding that goes, the government funding that went on, what was it called, Operation Warp Speed, that money goes to help them do the trials. So they could, I think, reasonably request, if they show like promising evidence of a vaccine that might work, I don't think it's quite a stretch to be able to request public funds to be able to engage in a large scale trial. Just prove that you have a working vaccine.
Give them that information. Even a big company like Novavax. Novavax has a 40,000 patient trial in the United States and Mexico, and another 30,000 patient trial in the UK. How many people know that? The number of people say, oh, I didn't know about Novavax. They're a big company. They are running big clinical trials right now. But why aren't we talking about that?
So wait, they're against big pharma, but they're saying the Novavax are the good guys, but they're also a big company. See how I really don't understand the kind of mental gymnastics, Simone Biles level of mental gymnastics that are needed to reconcile all this fucking bullshit at the same time and come out with some consistent position. It's fascinating to me how the Jimmy Dore mind works. The dumb left mind works.
Why don't we doing a report and saying vaccine hesitancy, people are nervous about mRNA technology. Okay, well, the Novavax. This is the technology.
And why are people worried about mRNA technology? Why? Ask yourself why. Because dipshits like Jimmy Dore peddle all this bullshit about it. That's why. There's no reason why people should automatically think that this is some worrying technology. It does not change your DNA, people. It doesn't.
Be willing to do it. I'm willing to bet half those people that are concerned about the vaccine, they would take it. And I've done a sort of an internal study or sort of talked to a lot. I mean, we have close to 10,000 patients that we're seeing, and most of them are not vaccinated because they're so nervous about worsening their long COVID symptoms and worsening their post-vaccination symptoms. And most of them are like, look, if the Novavax came out or a different platform, we would take it. So
that's so not true. I mean, there's so many interviews of people in hospital settings, some of which literally died days afterwards. There was a good New York Times video that's on YouTube. That all these people are basically libertarians, or they're just their beliefs against the vaccine are just immutable. I have not seen a single video where one of them was like, oh, well, I probably should have I would have gotten vaccinated if there was a non-mRNA option. I've not heard a single one. If anyone has a video of someone in a freaking ICU, either before dying or after nearly dying, giving an interview and says, oh, I didn't get vaccinated because I thought mRNA was bad. Not one.
I think when you're framing these questions about anti-vax, they're not anti-vax. Maybe 10%, 15%, no matter what vaccine you give them, they're going to say, nope, I don't want it. But to say 50% of the country is anti-vax, no, absolutely not. It's disingenuous. I think we can close the gap by introducing more platforms and getting more approved.
Again, this is that 10-15% is the hard anti-vax. But he's not taking into account all these other soft anti-vax people, which is pretty much everyone in the Jimmy Dore orbit.
Approvals out there.
Well, that was a handful. He's continued his stupidity on Twitter. Today I saw that he quoted a site, a rather right-wing site called Free West Media. I mean, just the name. You're a leftist and you're quoting a site called Free West Media. Anyway, he quoted this saying, Norway reclassifies COVID-19 no more dangerous than the ordinary flu. And I mean, yeah, this site should be, look, racism should not be combated with racism. What kind of fucking site is he sharing? And the argument here is that apparently Norwegian authorities are classifying now COVID as just another seasonal illness. And, you know, yeah, that is true. That is a reflection of the fact that it is a disease that's going to be with us on a regular basis, ups and downs. But here's the thing. Norway has like an 80% vaccination rate. So yeah, if the majority of your population is vaccinated, and perhaps that 20% that isn't is probably quite young and not vulnerable, yeah, you really don't have to worry much about it. I mean, it's bad that we'll have to worry about one more seasonal disease. And yes, it'll probably be worse than the flu. And the flu is pretty nasty, especially the man flu. Just saying, it's true. Hashtag not a hoax. I'm joking. Partly joking. My last flu was absolutely just knocked me out. Anyway, yeah, so he's gotten quite a backlash from this. So, and he's like, this guy writes, in Norway, 90% of the population over age of 18 have received the first dose and 83% have received their second dose and are thus considered fully vaccinated. What is it down in the Bible Belt? 50%? And what does Jimmy Dore respond with? That's what the establishment wants you to think. Keep dividing the country when this is the reality. Why only 28% of young black New Yorkers are vaccinated? There is very valid historical reasons why the black community in the US and in the UK that I also know directly are very skeptical about vaccines and government initiatives promoting vaccines. Personally, I think it's silly. They should know better. But this does not necessarily apply to the to the white anti-vaxxers. I mean, there's clearly a historical reason. I mean, for Christ's sake, in the US, the government experimented on black people in the past. So yes, they have a right to be distrustful of it. I'm not saying it's not an unwarranted sentiment. Like I said, I think they should know better. But I don't think that the sentiment is unwarranted. But what's the excuse for the friggin' Bible Belt? And why is he deflecting the reality of so much of Trump land being unvaccinated by basically making a straw man argument about young black New Yorkers? Young black New Yorkers. Young black people are far less at risk than of clogging the New York hospital system than old, middle-aged or old white people in the Bible Belt. That's the problem. These people are clogging fucking hospitals for people who need them. And I don't think that the majority of young black people are at risk of clogging the New York health system. So that is Jimmy Dore for you. He's not going to stop, no matter how many times you debunk his bullshit. He's just not going to stop, because that is the grift, people. That is the grift. He is, yeah. He's the best example of a soft anti-vaxxer. He's never going to go out and say it, but everything he does, everything he shares, whether it's the articles that he quotes on Twitter, whether it's the doctors that he invites on his show, they all have that characteristic of making people doubt about taking the vaccine. And who knows? I would not be surprised if Jimmy Dore fans have died now because they listened to him. So, yep. On that note, if you like this video, please like, please share. Most importantly, please subscribe. And please take the vaccine. Please do it. I don't even know why I'm saying this, because I suspect that most of my subscribers are smart enough to know this. I don't think that they that they're in that Jimmy Dore Dum Dum Left orbit. But if any Jimmy Dore video managed to watch this until the end, please take the vaccine for your sake, for everyone's sake. Happy Sunday.